Tom, I'm going to start with the Michael Chong story because it is, I guess, developed some new angles. First of all, I don't know if you happen to hear any of Morris Rosenberg's interview with Vashi today, where he basically denied there was any kind of impropriety here, any way that anybody was trying to curry favor with the prime minister. But then a story from later in the afternoon suggesting that, I guess, basically contrary to what the prime minister has said, it appears, this is in a Globe and Mail article again, that an intelligence report about Michael Chong being targeted by China was in fact circulated to his own national security advisor. So what do you make of all that?
Oh, that's a big oopsie, isn't it? And we were supposed to be opening up, talking about Canada summoning the Chinese ambassador. But instead, we've got this. I'm sorry.
Tom, are you still there?
Sure am. I'm
Sorry.
having a bit of a coughing problem. Give me 1 second.
Sure, not a problem. So, yeah, the story was going to be Melanie Joly, our foreign affairs minister today, summoning the Chinese ambassador, right?
over the alleged threats to MP Michael Chong, and yet instead we are talking about this.
Yeah.
That was the suggested opening, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to be getting this instead. Look, when they decided to throw CSIS under the bus yesterday, we knew they were in for a spot of trouble, and this is what's happening now.
So, Tom, I think what I want to know, given that, Sacha Trudeau testifying yesterday, I feel like we've discussed at length the optics of all of this and how bad it looks. So what I want to know is it really as bad as it looks, or does it look way worse than it actually is?
Well, I have a feeling they were under the impression that maybe Sacha Trudeau had helped them a bit yesterday, so they're going to send in Morris Rosenberg to try once again to clear things up and say it wasn't as bad as everybody's saying. But when Mr. Trudeau yesterday started his day saying, not my fault, they never told me, and from now on they better start telling me, there were two things that were flying in the face of that. The previous statements by his chief of staff, that Mr. Trudeau read everything, and the fact that his chief of intelligence was supposed to share everything with him. So now, if it's indeed true that briefing took place, Trudeau's never going to be able to wiggle his way out of this one. This is huge news.
Yeah, the question, of course, this wiggling your way out, this news that, in fact, his own national security advisor knew, which means he must have at some point known. I can't even imagine what the explanation for that would be.
Well, it's as you say, it means based on what they've told us. It's not us who are affirming, oh, well, he must have known. You know, when this thing broke yesterday, it was supposed to be the same sort of thing. It was supposed to be stand-down time. He's just said that he didn't know and that it's CSIS's fault. And there were those of us. I was doing something online. I was doing a show yesterday with Vashi Capellas, and I was very skeptical. I said, look, it just doesn't wash. It doesn't fit. And by the way, the Globe and Mail has not been caught on a single fact on any of this since the beginning of these issues. And there's a price to be paid. I mean, yesterday was their day for attacking the media. You know, Sacha Trudeau didn't go after the Globe and Mail out of nowhere. Trudeau went after the Globe and Mail in the SNC Lavalin file years ago in the case of Jody Wilson-Raybould, saying it's completely false what they've written. It was the same person. It was Bob Fife. And guess what? Fife was proven to be 100% right. And so you go after the Globe and Mail, you go after Bob Fife, you go after CSIS, and then, well, guess what? Loose lips sink ships. Well, too bad. This ship might sink because there are people whose lips are loosening up because they're tired of being thrown under the bus.
All right, so then let's go back to what we started with, which would have been the fact that the Chinese ambassador today summoned to meet because of this whole Michael Chong affair. What do you make of that? And by the way, how serious is that?
It's a very serious diplomatic step, but it goes into the category of what took you so long.
Mm-hmm.
We've had so much over the past several months. Chinese government interference in federal elections. We have people who are close to the Chinese regime who have been elected. We have people who have been targeted, mostly on the conservative side, and Trudeau's done nothing about it. We found out that somebody had to step down from the caucus of Conservative Premier Doug Ford in Ontario. We found out that Kennedy Stewart lost his election in Vancouver, certainly in large part, if not completely, because of Chinese government interference. And there are, according to my information, recordings that were made of the local Chinese consul in the process of getting everybody on side in the community, using their usual strategies, front groups and the like, to push for a different candidate. And I don't want to take anything away from that candidate who immediately, when this broke a few weeks back, he said, oh, this is not fair. It's because I'm of Asian Canadian extraction that, they wouldn't be making this accusation otherwise. Nobody's blaming him for having done this. It's the actions of the Chinese government that are on the table. And again, we know that that information exists. Why didn't the Canadian government do anything then? So maybe the heat has been so strong that they're trying sort of a two-pronged attack. Yesterday they tried, we had Sacha Trudeau go in. Today they're rolling out Maurice Rosenberg for the nth time to try to put a lid on this thing. But it just simply begs the question, why haven't you done anything in the meantime?
Which is a fair question to ask, I guess. I'm curious to see how the Prime Minister is going to deal with this. Have you seen a hide or hair of him today anywhere?
Well, he was at the National Convention, right? But isn't he heading to the coronation tomorrow, Tom?
Yeah, so he's going to be getting a blessing in disguise in the form of this coronation, because he's going to give a heated, passionate barn burner of a speech to a loving crowd of Liberal insiders in Ottawa. Then he's going to duck out, hop on the government plane, fly over to London, arrive midday probably tomorrow in London time. Just basically have time to catch a couple of hours sleep, which I sincerely hope he does, because these things are exhausting. And then get up probably first thing in the morning on Saturday, London time, because it's going to be hours of preparation. You don't just show up, to the cathedral. You've got to get vetted. You've got to get everybody in line. You've got to get in line with 1,000 other limousines, and it's going to be an all-day affair. So it's exhausting, but it is a blessing, because when he finally shows up sometime next week, he's going to hope that some of the dust will have begun to settle over this. But I have a feeling that there are people in the security establishment who yesterday said, "Oh, really? That's the way this is going to be played? Okay, watch." And we're starting to watch.
I will. I'm going to just go ahead and put this out there, Tom. Tell me if you disagree. I believe it will probably be. He's staying at an Econo Inn, isn't he? Econo Lodge.
I think so. Yes, yeah. It's an Airbnb somewhere. Yeah,
he had a discount.
He's got to watch. Yeah,
I heard he
5 hours. He's got to be so careful. I think it's only one night from the calculation I just made there. But yes, he's not going to be spending $9,000 or $6,000 or whatever it was a night to stay at the richest hotel room in London. He's not going to get caught doing that a second time.
Yeah, it's a stay for two, pay for one. Okay, so let's go to the next topic.
So I'd like you to. I was just watching Bernard Dranville speaking to our colleagues over at CTV News. I imagine he's got some splaining to do about wanting to give himself more power, and I think this is going to bring forth another constitutional challenge. Will it not?
Yeah, and it's a really great question, because, Natasha, I think you've hit the nail right on the head. This is so typical of the CAQ government. So they didn't like school boards because they couldn't control them, because they were elected officials with a mandate through legislation, and they couldn't tell them what to do. So they eliminated school boards. They didn't get rid of the English boards because, thank goodness, so far the courts have said no, the minority language community has the right to control and manage. I think that that's all in danger with Bill C-13. We can talk about that as well today. I think that would be a good idea. But this so-called service centers that they created in the place of school boards, they've gone to taking decisions that they haven't vetted with the government. So they're not supposed to do that. You see, this is typical of the CAQ. They want to be in charge of everything, but responsible for nothing. So whenever the goo hits the fan, oh well, it's not our fault. It's the guy in charge of the SAAQ. It's not the government's fault. It's not a minister's fault. So something happens in education. What happened here, where it started to break down, was in the Saguenay. The head of the service board, the school service board, said, "Look, we're never going to be able to do what the government said with regard to 4-year-old kindergarten. The resources aren't there. The people aren't there. It's not going to happen." And they fell on this guy like a ton of bricks and said, "This is terrible. He's not doing his job." And then the government announced, Drainville announced just a few weeks later, saying, "Well, I'm not going." He actually used the word BS, the full version. He said, "I'm not going to BS you." And he's used the English word. He said, "This isn't going to happen. It's true. We just don't have the resources. We're not going to deliver on this promise." I found that actually refreshing, that a minister would say, "Look, we're going to stop snowing you. It's not going to happen." But what the overarching thing with Legault since he got there is he cannot put up with any other power. Watch his behavior with Gabriel Nadeau-Dubois. Watch his behavior with Paul Saint-Pierre Plamondon. He can't stand opposition parties, can't stand anybody questioning him, and it's the same thing here. It wasn't enough to get rid of the school boards. Avowedly, the reason that they're doing this is to take away any real decision-making power from these bodies that are supposed to be taking care of local issues. So you're going to have bureaucrats in Quebec City who know nothing about education in specific areas and their specific concerns, dictating centrally things that are supposed to apply. It's going to break down the same way our health system breaks down when you've got bureaucrats in Quebec City who know nothing about local conditions and local needs and local communities dictating things. This is the CAQ approach, very centralized. It's the most centralizing government we've ever had in the history of Quebec.
We got a minute, Tom. You want to mention, talk about Bill C-13? So this is the official act to amend the Languages Act. What's the latest on this?
Well, I think that it's worth mentioning that Anthony Housefather has continued to stand up very strongly against Bill C-13, as has, for example, Emmanuela Lambropoulos. And there are several others that I am told they're not going to vote for it. A lot of them might be looking at maybe abstaining instead of voting outright against. The one that came as so I've spoken to Housefather and he confirmed that to me. And I guess some of them are keeping the door open to not completely voting against their government because it's a whipped vote and there will be consequences for them politically. But one of the people who surprised me, somebody who used to be my MP when I lived in the West Island, and a wonderful guy. I've got nothing but good things to say about Francis Scarpeligia. But I had a long talk with him, and he said that his due diligence didn't lead him to believe that there were real problems with C-13. And I was gobsmacked. I went through a couple of the issues with him. We just talked about one. That's why I referenced C-13, which is the potential effect on the minority language school boards. Because if you're no longer, the way this thing is structured, there's in Canada, and it's a demographic fact that there's one minority language. Of course, it's French for the whole country, but there are things that could be lost for the English-speaking community of Quebec if we're not careful how this thing is structured. And when you incorporate by reference Bill 101 and therefore Bill 96 into Bill C-13, there could be real problems. These are the things that were extremely well identified by Marc Garneau on his way out, and I think it's a mistake not to see that. I respectfully didn't understand Francis Scarpeligia's argument, but it's going to be interesting to watch. I'm told that there are upwards of a dozen people who could either vote against or abstain, and that would at least be a way of sending a message to the central of the federal Liberal Party that not everybody agrees with the way they've handled this file.
We shall see. Tom, thank you so much. Appreciate
it. All the best.